Hey guys, it's Torgs here with a new type of guide for you. This is a guide on my 3.25 League Start Gladiator Bleed Sweep build. That's a tongue twister. In this video, I'm going to go over the direct main points of why I believe this build will work as a relevant League starter and why it could be a good fit for you, as well as what has changed to make it this way. First, let's talk about what has changed that I believe will make this relevant compared to leagues past. I'm going to try to stick to the basic ones pertaining to quality of life and passive skill trees, just because I could go on and on about all of the differences in melee and quality, but there's a ton of resources out there. I recommend going to look at those to get more information on that, but this is more about the build. If you like the video and the build, give me a like, give me a subscribe. It helps a ton, and I really appreciate it. Enjoy. Alright, so now this is the skill tree for the build, and I want to go over some of the 3.25 differences that I believe will have a huge impact, not only on this side of the tree for all of the melee characters, but as well as what makes this build function as good as it's going to, not only in Act 1 to Act 10, but also all the way into T16 and 17s, and without a doubt be able to kill all the pinnacle bosses with relative ease. I'm going to start with one of the super simple yet super effective ways that makes this a really good starter build. First is, since we're going bleeding, they added Wicked Blade down here, which gives you increased damage and duration with bleed, as well as a 30% chance to cause bleed within the first act. And right here, you have a Mana Mastery, which gives you Mana Leech and reduced cost of attacks. This is absolutely huge. You don't really even need to get the Mana Reservation efficiency right off bat, but just getting Spirit of War in the first act is going to make it so much easier to maintain your damage while having auras up, because you're constantly going to be regenerating your mana without having to spam mana potions. Absolutely wonderful. This is a huge change, and one of the things I think is going to make this so good for us. And the next big thing, and I think this is actually going to carry us through the acts as well really easy, but also transition later into the game, and that's martial experience. I'm going to have a picture of the 3.24 here as well so you can see, but that last line is the big and important change. And as you can see, it says on the new one, hits have a 30% chance to ignore enemy physical damage reduction, to where before it would simply overwhelm it. Ignoring it entirely is 1,000 times better than overwhelming it. This isn't a reduction, it's a removal, it's an ignore. I'm almost hitting them like they have no resistances whatsoever. And it's 30% within the first act. This is amazing. And within the second and third act, you have Bastion Breaker down here, which, same thing. Instead of having the overwhelm, you now have the physical damage ignore. And it's 50% here and 30% here. So you have 80% chance to ignore enemy physical damage reductions, and this applies to bosses and pinnacle bosses. These two nodes are what's going to make us capable of scaling unbelievably, and you get it so early on into building that it is just so nice. And then really the only other thing that has changed on the skill tree that we take that's really nice is Savage Intensity. So Soul Steal and the Harvester of Foes is just really amazing. So I was going to pass to them anyways, and most axe bleeds always have. But Savage Intensity is now thrown into the mix, where you can generate Rage on hit right off the bat as well. So now you can get your Rage earlier, which Rage has been nerfed a little bit, but it still does 30% more damage when it's maxed out. And your Slaughter, instead of the bottom line, it says you gain Rage on hit now rather than maximum Rage. So you get a lot of Rage with this build innately just from playing it. And other than that, the tree isn't that crazy different. The biggest differences are going to come from our Ascendency here, and we'll take a couple minutes to go over that so you can see, and then we'll switch over to some gear. Now, when talking about the Ascendancy, this is where the bulk of the changes that I think make this a league starter and scalable into late game relatively easily. And one of the first things that you'll notice is gratuitous violence you can get after your very first trials. And right off the bat at Act 4 now, you're capable of clearing entire packs with ease with explosions, rather than having to wait until your second trials. So your very first trials, you're going to immediately see the difference in how the build functions. You're going to be able to clear packs relatively easy. You're going to have that 360 sweep that's really going to pop everything. It's going to be nice. And as soon as you finish with your second act, your second labs, you'll get Jagged Technique, which is the bleedings that you inflict are aggravated. And you've been able to get aggravated bleeds in the past, but it hasn't been 100%, and you have to waste a few points on your skill tree as well as implicits on gloves or whatever, right? But now you just get aggravated bleed forever. And why aggravated bleed is important is because with aggravated bleed, what it does is a potential damage from bleed itself is 70% of your physical damage. Now, when bleeding is on a target, if the target is moving, then the damage is dealt equal to twice the base for a total of 210% damage. And with Jagged Techniques, it's an aggravated bleed, meaning that even if your target is standing still, it is acting as if they are moving all the time. So this is just a massive increase in damage right off the bat from your first two lab trials. And right then and there, you already are absolutely cruising through your acts with ease. Now, the next options are definitely a preference for you. War of Attrition feels really good against all of your bosses and rare monsters. So your uniques, your act bosses, and at that point, your map bosses, as well as the uniques in your maps. And then Weapon Master is just kind of like a pseudo cull. You do 30% more damage with hits and ailments against enemies on low life because we are wielding an axe. I think War of Attrition's a little bit better first, and then follow up with Weapon Master. But your big tickets are going to be right here with these two. This is a massive change to the Gladiator that's going to make going through your axe a lot easier than they have been in the past as far as melee skilling goes. So yeah, that is the skill tree difference. Now I'm going to go over the armor and equipment so that you can see what that looks like. Alright, so one of the things that's going to make this build really good to League start is all of the armor that I'm using to get going is all rare. It doesn't require any uniques, it doesn't require any super expensive items. I can scale it using a couple of items that'll be absolutely massive for the build, but even then the items are going to be really, really cheap. So like our axe, even based off of our damage, I'm using Essence Crafted physical damage, T2, T3, and T3. So nothing super special here, and I have a suffix left open just to show you that you can scale it so much more than what I am, and I'm using a middle of the grade crafted physical damage over time multiplier. My helmet is nothing but spell suppression and resistances, as well as armor and life. Life, spell suppression, resistance. Life, spell suppression, resistance. Damage over time necklace, physical damage, life, attributes. Nothing crazy here. Resistance, the -7 total mana cost will be helpful if you get it. If you don't, honestly, still not a big deal until later in the game. Eventually, you're going to get it anyway, so it's going to be required, but off the bat to start the build, you don't need it. But resistances. This doesn't even have a belt on it. I'm still capped on everything. The customization of the build, because it requires no uniques also makes it super, super nice. Now, if I throw a couple pieces on that would cost 11C this league, but on a league start, probably 50 to 60 chaos, which will be relatively easy to get early on, my damage goes right back up. And if you start crafting a little bit nicer things, it goes up even further. There's a lot of customization here that you have the ability to do to scale it. And keep in mind, this is only a level 91 character. I can get clusters. I can start moving pieces around to really, really put the damage to the moon. And the whole time, if I go to my configurations, if I go to Guardian Pinnacles, the damage doesn't change. Why? Because I'm still ignoring all of their reduction. I mean, this build I think is going to do absolutely great. I'm hoping you guys stick around and see how it finishes. I'm going to be league starting it as well as doing my other guides using this build. And like I said, if you like the build, give it a like. I would appreciate it. I put some time into this one. This is my very first league start build that I'm making. If you want to see more or know more, ask questions. I'll make more guides about it. I'll go further in depth. I'm excited to show you guys some examples when it comes out. And yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you guys. And if you have any questions, down in the comment sections, hit me up. Come take a look at the stream. I'll be streaming all the time on Kick. The link will be in my bio, as well as my Discord. Come kick it with the boys. We love PoE. We love playing the game and learning and building a community, man. It's really cool. So if you guys enjoyed it, again, please like, subscribe. I really appreciate it. And have a good one.